Well, nice to be back for this in-between week of the Florida trips. I think all of the guys enjoy being back around their families in more familiar surrounds. First opportunity to be back on our own training field and utilise some of the um, the qualities of being in a more secluded area and on your own. But I think all in all, a good couple of days that have really backed up on what was otherwise a very competitive week down in Florida at IMG, and just about everyone I think's in a good physical place. I mean, health wise, not just in terms of their fitness, which of course bodes well for preparation.
Thank you, Coach. We'll start with Drake Hills from the Tennessee, and then we'll go down the line to Ben Wright. Go ahead, Drake.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Hey, Gary. Just wanted to talk to you about obviously the preseason game against Charlotte. Historically, it's just been the 30-minute periods. Is that's going to continue? And then also on top of that, or I guess in relation to that, have you decided which players would play just the 30 minutes? Maybe you want to see 60 from someone else, or perhaps you might want to limit some other guys. Is there a designation for the full roster yet?
In terms of the timing, actually gone about some of the work slightly differently this year, Drake. And you're right in saying that I've been very much an advocate of the 30-minute periods. The guys have been in a really good place, as I've said all along here, physically. They've already got through 45 minutes of flat work, albeit amongst ourselves. These games down in Tampa will consist of 90 minutes, and then the final two games will be 120 minutes. And I've not done that before. I know other teams have. I've always been a little bit concerned about having those prolonged games for the squad, really. So my hope is, and I'll hopefully answer all of your question by the end of this. By the time we get to the final two games, I'm hoping that we're getting closer to what we might see as a starting group, certainly within maybe two or three bodies. Secondly, I would like to play them, the best part of maybe 70 to 90 minutes by the final game, and that gives the rest of the group an opportunity to stay in a decent match sharpness state, and of course not knowing how people will be in that final week in terms of health. It means that everyone's then in a position that they can be competing for the Seattle game. So I hope I covered all the bases there, Drake.
Thank you, Coach.
Yeah, you more than enough. Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Ben Wright and then Tim Sullivan. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Gary, there were some reports that Randall left the Costa Rican team with some stomach issues. I was just wondering if you had an update on him and how he's doing.
Yeah, we've been in constant contact with the Costa Rican group. He had some gastric problems that were not COVID related, which had kept him out of the two games, sadly for him, and it'll obviously be a detriment to the last game that they play tonight in their qualification games. So I believe he's back tomorrow. Where are we? Wednesday? Yes, he lands tomorrow, and we'll take stock of where he's at. We do get quite a detailed fitness program of what he's achieved, what work they've done, his loadings, ground covered, etc. So we'll glean from that how much work he's actually done, and then through some testing, we'll work out where he's at within the group.
Thank you, Coach. Next, we'll go to Tim Sullivan for Club and Country. Go ahead, Tim.
Gary, you mentioned wanting to get some of your first choice guys, a big run out as you lead up to the regular season. How long do you think it's going to take before you kind of identify that group? Obviously, you only have so much turnover in this team this year. What is kind of your expectation for the timeline on kind of figuring out what your first choice 11 is going to be?
Well, the first couple of games, and I just thinking back now on Drake's question, he was very polite in saying that you didn't answer part of it, which was, when are we going to get to that? So I think the first couple of games, we're going to see groups that are a little bit more what you would class as younger players with senior players, mixed up groups. That I want to give everyone an opportunity that's just come into the group to to show what they're about, to see how they fit into the group. I don't want to make any or too many preconceived decisions on who should and who shouldn't. And then slowly but surely, I'd like to try and obviously get to that point where, we're getting a couple of games of what might be classed as a group that could lead into that first game. So I would hope by the time I think is it Cincinnati that we play second but last game down in Tampa. Cincinnati and Philadelphia will be the two games that I'm really looking at trying to put those groups together in a more constructive fashion towards the start of the season.
Thank you, Coach. Next we'll go to Claudio Villalobos. Go ahead, Claudio.
Thank you, Coach. I'm just wondering how, with all the changes that come about every season in terms of personnel, in terms of stuff you have to do, in terms of switching to the other conference this season, I'm wondering how much of that has changed your game plan in preseason compared to what you did last year, especially because last year you started with a lot of games in local, playing in Nashville, and this year is quite the opposite. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really good point. It would be, I think, foolish of me and the group not to mentally and physically be ready for the demands of this first 8 games. Unfortunately, this year, as you've rightly pointed out, it's the complete 180 from last year, where everyone was looking forward to a prolonged run at home and getting off to, what we all hoped would be a flying start. There are going to be plenty of competitive challenges, but I think we also want to try and put ourselves in a position where we have some targets to aim for. We have an understanding and appreciation of the challenges in front of us. And of course, in the process of that, we're getting used to some new teams, some new stadia. There are plenty of things that we have got to try and, really overcome in the opening stages of the season, and still be in a competitive and challenging spot in the Western Conference. So it seems like, the first 3 years of our existence, there's always been something that we've got to try and overcome. This year's no different, but for very different reasons. And I think if there's any group that are capable of meeting these challenges head on, I'd like to think it's us.
Thank you, Coach. Next we'll go to Ben Wright. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Gary, it feels like a kind of key point for you in roster building has been competition for playing spots over the last couple of years, and especially at forward. I'm just kind of wondering how you're assessing the forward group so far, with like CJ and Daniel coming back, Aka getting his first preseason, and then Teal and Ethan coming in. How are those guys shaping up, and what are you looking for as far as like specific roles for those guys in the team?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. There's a real depth to that front line. And I think if you look at the most successful teams anywhere in the world, they've all got choices. They've all got competition. Those guys are constantly keeping each and every one of the others on their toes to try and force them out of the group. And that in itself can only be good for the team in general. You couple into the fact with that forwards do it for the most part, some real hot periods, and then they can falter. They do lose confidence, and if there's an area of the field that, is more based on confidence and belief than any other, it probably is the forward line, and you of course see the results of that when they are in a good mood and a good vein. So I'm absolutely delighted. First of all, we've got the players we have in the group. Teal and Ethan, the new additions up top, have been fantastic in the way that they've approached the work and how they've fitted in with the group. Aki's come in a much fitter, sharper, and in general, more capable physical position in this pre-season. And I think we've seen some of the benefits of that. He looks sharper in the training. He looks brighter himself in the way that he's performing. And I think the next step for him really is to find a vein of form and that connection with the guys around him to ultimately show what he's capable of, which is to be creative and score goals. I think you've left a couple of players out of that group that are in that creative world. One, of course, is away with the international group, and we've already mentioned him, Randall. But I've got to say, Luke Hackinson and Hamwalla have looked really, really bright in pre-season. And those guys in slightly different dimensions in the group can also be hugely effective and supportive for, what we've spoken about as mainly centre forwards. But, Hanny looks in a real good place. Daniel Rios coming back off of what was an injury blighted season really last year, looks in a good place. So all in all, we have a really strong front line.
Drake Hill is on with Coach Smith. Go ahead, Drake.
Yeah, Gary, I want to make sure I didn't trip over this one, but what's the you guys have a slot for next Tuesday when you guys play on the 12th?
Do I have a slot?
A slot, like if you filled the slot with a team of where you guys are going to be
playing. Oh, right.
Yeah.
No, we haven't. We play Charlotte on Tuesday. I think I'm sure it's Charlotte on Tuesday.
Charlotte on Friday.
Oh, you know more than me. I need to get with my team admin on that. Okay. So it's not, is it? I didn't think so. I've got Matt confirming that. So you pointed me in the wrong direction.
Sorry, I'm looking.
If my preparations go down the pan, it's your fault, Drake. Okay, so we have Charlotte on Tuesday, which is obviously straightforward. The game against Philadelphia Union 2, which was scheduled for the Saturday, I believe, due to some abnormalities around their group. I think it was more about competition than anything, from what I'm led to believe, have pulled out of that game. We have tried to fill that fixture with some of the teams that are down in Florida, of course. At this precise moment, there are no professional takers. I want to leave it as long as I can. And really, the picture of that weekend now will be, if something goes wrong with one of the other groups and there's a team available, we'll wait to the last minute to get good competition. And if it doesn't happen, then we'll play an inter-squad game again. I'd rather do it that way, personally, than to try and schedule, a college or amateur game at this point, and wait on for one of those pro teams just in case.
Tim Sullivan, you're on with Coach Gary Smith. Go ahead, Tim.
Obviously, I think everybody expects Dax to be one of your leaders year in and year out, but especially with Walker, Anibal, and Randall out, who is kind of stepping up and maybe being kind of like the deputy leader to Dax while you guys are in training right now?
Yeah, it's always nice to see the personalities, how they gel, how some of them, step into that void that's created when you've got some big characters like Walker and Annabelle away, because there is space for new personalities to step up. Been great to see the experience of Sean and Teal, who've been in and around the league for a lot of years, at a new group, still voice their opinions, you know, in a right and respectful way. They've been great characters to add, and they've, you know, verbally been able to give us a slightly different dimension and thought process. I have to be honest. I think the rest of the guys, whilst Dax wears the armband, guys like CJ, Dave Romney, Dan Lovitz, you know, Joe, they're all very good characters. They might not always be, you know, verbally loud and you know, outspoken, but they choose their time to say their bit, and I think, you know, more by weight of numbers instead of maybe one or two individuals, we're getting the right outcome.